1. The emergence of the sacred city, c. 3000 BCE. The story of complex society in the Western Hemisphere was long centered on the monumental achievements of Mesoamerica and the later empires of the Andes. Yet, on a dry, arid terrace overlooking the Supe River Valley of modern-day Peru, a civilization arose that fundamentally predates them all. This is the history of Caral, a monumental urban center that flourished approximately 5,000 years ago, beginning around 3000 BCE. At this time in global history, the world was on the cusp of organized civilization. In Egypt, the foundation of the Old Kingdom was being laid, but the Great Pyramids of Giza were centuries from construction. In Mesopotamia, the Sumerian city-states were just beginning to establish their dominance. Without any contact or influence from these distant Old World powers, the people of Caral independently developed the key features of civilization: monumental architecture, specialized labor, centralized authority, and stratified society. Caral is the capital and largest known settlement of the Norte Chico civilization, thriving in the late Archaic period of the Central Andes until its eventual decline around 1800 BCE. This entire span places the city firmly in the pre-ceramic era. The people of Caral did not possess pottery, a fact that led to its enormous antiquity being overlooked for decades by archaeologists who traditionally relied on ceramics as a primary marker of advanced, settled culture. Caral shattered this assumption, proving that a complex urban state could be built on stone, earth, and fiber alone. The city is situated about 14 miles inland from the Pacific Ocean, strategically positioned to harness the agricultural potential of the river valley. The scale of the construction is staggering. The site is characterized by 6 massive platform mounds or pyramids, the largest of which is the Pirámide Mayor, towering 92 feet high. These structures were not accidental accumulations, but the result of meticulously organized, large-scale communal labor. The emergence of Caral, contemporaneous with the very first urban centers of the world, demands its recognition as an independent, primary cradle of civilization in the Americas.
Caral's architectural blueprint and engineering genius showcased sophisticated urban planning and a clear understanding of hierarchy. The city is divided into the upper sector, Caral Alto, which served as the administrative and ceremonial core, and the lower sector, Caral Bajo, which contained secondary monuments and extensive residential quarters. The major structures in the upper sector include the 6 massive stepped pyramids. These pyramids were not built by stacking blocks directly, but through a brilliant and labor-efficient engineering technique, the shikra method. Builders would weave large bags from reeds, fill these shikra bags with stones, and then use the filled bags as structural filler within the retaining walls of the monumental platforms. This technique had 2 profound benefits. Efficiency: it allowed for rapid, large-scale construction by mobilizing large groups of workers to gather stones and weave bags, simplifying the construction process. And seismic stability: the layers of reed bags and loose stones acted as a form of natural shock absorption, making the massive structures remarkably earthquake-resistant in this seismically active region. This demonstrates an applied, practical understanding of civil engineering principles. A second defining feature of the architecture is the sunken circular plaza, the back-planned SCP. These vast, recessed, stone-lined arenas were built at the base of the monumental pyramids. The architectural pairing, the elevated, restricted access pyramid, and the open communal SCP created a powerful stage for public rituals. The SCP was designed to accommodate large crowds and amplify sound, suggesting that these plazas were the central gathering points for the entire community. This specific architectural form, pioneered at Caral, would become a lasting template for ceremonial architecture throughout the Andes for the next 4,000 years. The careful spatial organization, the precise orientation of structures, and the scale of the construction all point to a powerful, centralized authority capable of organizing thousands of people for complex, long-term public works. The city itself was a physical manifestation of the state's ideology. The immense size and stability of Caral required a powerful and reliable economic foundation. This foundation was the Maritime-Agricultural Symbiosis, a sophisticated system of interregional trade and resource specialization that linked the inland farmers with the coastal fishing communities. Caral, located inland, was dependent on the development of highly efficient irrigation agriculture. The Caral people were pioneers in hydraulic engineering, building intricate canal systems to divert water from the Supe River to irrigate the desert soil. The most important crop grown in the valley was not food, but cotton. Cotton was the industrial crop, the strategic commodity that fueled the entire economy. Other staple crops included squash, beans, sweet potatoes, and various fruits. The coastal settlements, such as Aspero, relied on the phenomenally rich marine life of the Pacific, harvesting massive quantities of anchovies and sardines due to the nutrient-rich Humboldt Current. The economy operated on a system of mutual necessity. The coastal communities desperately needed the strong and high-quality cotton from the inland valley to weave their fishing nets and lines, which were essential for their industrial-scale fishing. The inland Caral population, despite its agricultural wealth, needed a constant supply of dried, high-protein fish from the coast to supplement their largely carbohydrate-based diet, ensuring the health and stability of the large urban population. The ruling class of Caral likely derived its power and wealth from its control over the production of cotton and its mastery of the logistics and organization of this trade network. They acted as the central administrative authority, managing the flow of goods and ensuring the mutual benefit of both the agriculturalists and the maritime specialists. The city's wealth and longevity were thus built on cooperation and organized economic dependency.
4. Governance without coercion, the peaceful state. Perhaps the most unique and historically significant feature of Caral is its peaceful nature. In the narratives of early civilization worldwide, the emergence of the state is often accompanied by the rise of military power, defensive fortifications, and evidence of organized warfare. Caral offers a powerful and enduring counter-narrative. Archaeological evidence strongly suggests that Caral was a civilization based on cooperation and ideological control, not military coercion. Absence of fortifications. There are no defensive walls, trenches, or military structures surrounding the city or its key monumental areas. Absence of weaponry. No caches of weapons for warfare, such as maces, slings, or shields, have been recovered from the thousands of excavation sites in the Norte Chico region. Tools found are exclusively for construction, agriculture, and ritual. Absence of trauma. Skeletal remains from burials consistently show no evidence of violent death, such as blunt force trauma or projectile wounds, which are common at sites of conflict. Artistic silence. The few recovered artistic fragments contain no visual depictions of battle, captured prisoners, or military themes. The leaders of Caral mobilized and controlled the large population through the management of the essential trade network and, critically, through the power of religious ritual and performance. The monumental pyramids and plazas were grand stages where the elite, likely acting as a priestly class, demonstrated their connection to the cosmos, their ability to predict seasonal cycles, and their control over the economic engine. Ritual and logistics were the twin pillars of governance, successfully sustaining this complex, non-military urban society for over 1,000 years. 5. The Quipu and the records of the first American bureaucracy. To manage a complex economy involving large-scale irrigation, labor mobilization for pyramid building, and the continuous flow of trade between the coast and the inland valley, the Caral state required a highly sophisticated method of record-keeping. That method was the Quipu. The quipu is a device made of cotton or camelid hair strings, knotted in specific ways to encode numerical and possibly non-numerical data. While the quipu is most famously associated with the Inca Empire thousands of years later, the discovery of a quipu fragment at Caral, dated to approximately 2500 BCE, revolutionized the history of Andean technology. The Caral quipu is the oldest known example of this record-keeping system in the Americas. Its existence proves several key facts about the nature of this early state. Administrative depth. The state possessed a high degree of bureaucratic and administrative sophistication necessary to track resources, labor quotas, perhaps associated with the Shikra system, and census data, without a written phonetic script. Independent innovation. The quipu represents a unique and independent invention for information management, demonstrating that complex governance does not require the specific visual script systems of the Old World. Cultural lineage. The quipu establishes a profound technological and cultural continuity in the Andes, linking the very first urban centers to the largest empire the Americas would ever see. The Caral people were the originators of a governance tool that would endure for nearly 5 millennia. In addition to the quipu, the high level of technical skill is evident in their artistry, particularly their textiles and carved gourds. The textiles, used for nets and clothing, were technically advanced, and carved gourds sometimes featured geometric designs or early cosmological motifs. 6. The spiritual heritage and the voice of the city. The spiritual life of Caral was central to its political power. The architecture of the city, its towering platforms and expansive plazas, was engineered for large-scale public religious performance. The elite solidified their authority by claiming unique access to the spiritual world. The nature of their religious practice is inferred from ritual objects and offerings. Musical orchestras. Inside the amphitheater pyramid, archaeologists discovered a cache of ceremonial musical instruments, 32 flutes made from the bones of sacred condors and pelicans, and 37 cornets made from deer and llama bones. The sheer quantity indicates that synchronized, large-scale musical performances were integral to their rituals. The haunting, complex sounds generated by these instruments, amplified by the architecture, would have been a powerful, unifying, and awe-inspiring experience for the thousands of assembled citizens. The staff god motif. A fragment of a carved gourd was found bearing an image that many scholars believe to be the earliest known representation of the staff god, a key deity figure carrying staffs or scepters. This figure would later become the central unifying icon of the Chavin culture and its successors across the Andes. The Caral people were the originators of a governance tool that would endure for nearly 5 millennia. Ritual offerings. Offerings discovered within the temple mounds included bundles of quipu cords, textiles, food remains, and sometimes carefully wrapped and placed human burials, including that of a sacrificed infant, suggesting ritual dedication was integral to the construction process. The city's focus was not on private worship, but on public display and collective spiritual experience, using music and spectacle within the monumental architecture to reinforce the social order and the state's command over the forces of nature.
7. Environmental catastrophe and the dispersal of culture. The Caral civilization enjoyed over 12 centuries of stability, but around 1800 BCE, the entire Norte Chico region began a period of terminal decline. This was not a military collapse, but an environmental one, stemming from massive climate change. The Peruvian coast is highly vulnerable to the El Niño Southern Oscillation, or ENSO phenomenon. Paleoclimate data, derived from ice and sediment cores, indicates that the region experienced a prolonged and extreme episode of climatic upheaval during this period. The environmental disaster took the form of a devastating cycle. Extreme flooding, a prolonged phase of intense El Niño events, brought catastrophic torrential rains to the normally dry coast. These floods would have destroyed the coastal fishing camps and, critically, overwhelmed and ruined the sophisticated irrigation canals of inland Caral, drowning the cotton crops and choking the fertile land with silt. Extended drought. The initial flooding was followed by a period of severe, long-term drought. Without the functional irrigation system, and with the failure of seasonal rains, agricultural production collapsed entirely. This dual blow, the loss of agricultural capacity, cotton, and the disruption of marine resources, fish, caused the Maritime-Agricultural Symbiosis to fail completely. The economic engine of the state stalled, and the authority of the elite, who could no longer ensure the proper flow of resources, evaporated. Instead of descending into warfare, the populace engaged in a peaceful exodus. The urban centers were gradually abandoned. Archaeological evidence for this decline is poignant. The nearby coastal site of Vichama, occupied during the final period, features wall murals depicting starving figures with sunken ribs and pleading expressions, providing a visual record of the famine and desperation that forced the dispersal. The rise of new smaller settlements like Benico after Caral's abandonment shows that the population reorganized and carried their cultural traditions, their architecture and planning to new areas, seeking more stable environmental niches. The people of Caral did not disappear, they scattered, carrying the seeds of their culture, the U-shaped plazas, the quipu, the spiritual motifs, throughout the wider Andean region, serving as the essential foundation for every great civilization that followed. 8. The enduring legacy in the Andean world. Caral's historical significance lies in its role as the undisputed template for subsequent Andean civilizations. While the city itself was silent by 1800 BCE, its cultural innovations established a trajectory that would define the region for millennia. The key aspects of the Caral legacy that were successfully transmitted and amplified by later cultures include architectural model. The monumental U-shaped platform mound and the sunken circular plaza, or SCP, were adopted across the Peruvian coast during the subsequent initial period, c. 1800 to 900 BCE, becoming the standard layout for major ceremonial and political centers, such as Sechin Alto and El Paraíso. Governance technology. The Quipu system of record-keeping became the administrative backbone of the Andes, persisting through the rise of the Chavin, Wari, Tiwanaku, and finally reaching its zenith under the Inca. Spiritual iconography. The staff god motif, first identified at Caral, became the cornerstone of the unified Chavin religious cult that dominated the Andean highlands and coast in the early horizon, c. 900 BCE, providing a cultural coherence that transcended local boundaries. Economic strategy. The principle of verticality and interregional specialization, the organized trade between different ecological zones, coast, valley, highlands, became the defining feature of successful Andean economies, ensuring stability and wealth across diverse geographical landscapes. The history of the great Inca Empire, which would eventually control the largest territory in the ancient Americas, is only fully intelligible when viewed as the culmination of the principles and innovations first established in the peaceful, pioneering urban center of Caral. Caral is the foundation stone, the undisputed earliest source of Andean complexity, governance, and monumental tradition. 9. Modern archaeology and the scientific confirmation of Caral. The definitive recognition of Caral as America's oldest city was achieved through the rigorous application of modern science, particularly by the team led by Dr. Ruth Shady Solis. Their work established the site's credibility on a global stage. The initial and most critical confirmation came from radiocarbon dating, or 14C dating. By dating the preserved organic fibers of the shikra bags found deep within the pyramid cores, archaeologists were able to provide hard, unassailable evidence of the site's extreme age, placing its origins around 2600 BCE, thereby proving its contemporaneity with early Egypt and Mesopotamia.
Ongoing research continues to employ advanced scientific and technological tools to sharpen the understanding of Caral. Paleo-environmental studies. The use of ice cores from Andean glaciers and sediment cores from the Pacific floor allows scientists to create detailed, millennia-long records of rainfall and ocean temperature. These records empirically confirm the severe environmental changes, the heightened El Niño activity, and subsequent drought that coincide precisely with Caral's abandonment around 1800 BCE, validating the climate collapse hypothesis. Isotopic analysis. Scientists used stable isotope analysis, such as delta-15N and delta-13C, on human remains recovered from Caral. By analyzing bone collagen, they can reconstruct the long-term diet of the populace. These studies consistently show a significant marine protein component in the diet of the inland Caral residents, providing biological confirmation of the intensive, essential trade with the coastal settlements. Remote sensing, or LiDAR technology. Modern aerial surveys utilizing this technology have been instrumental in mapping the entire Norte Chico region. LiDAR penetrates subtle ground cover, revealing the precise extent of the ancient irrigation canal networks and the total number of surrounding settlements, up to 30 major centers, confirming the massive region-wide scope of the civilization. In 2009, Caral's historical significance was formally recognized when the sacred city of Caral-Supe was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This status acknowledged its outstanding universal value as the unique, independent starting point for urban civilization in the Americas.
Daily life and social structure in Caral. Life in Caral, while centered around monumental architecture and powerful ritual, was dictated by the rigors of agriculture and organized labor. The high degree of social stratification is evident in the layout of the city and the types of burials recovered. The populace of Caral consisted primarily of farmers, fishermen, and laborers, who were organized into cohesive groups, likely based on kinship, known as Ayu in later Andean contexts. These groups were responsible for fulfilling labor quotas, such as providing the stone-filled shikra bags for construction and maintaining the vast, sophisticated irrigation canals. Their lives were cyclical, tied to the planting and harvest of the cotton and food crops in the valley, and the coordinated exchange with the coastal communities. The residential areas in the lower sector and the periphery of the city reveal simple, clustered dwellings constructed primarily of wood, reeds, and mud plaster, adobe. These residences typically consisted of single or multiple rooms centered around a courtyard, reflecting extended family units. In stark contrast, the elite residences in the upper sector were larger, built with more careful stonework, and contained specialized features such as internal hearths, likely used for ritual burning and not just cooking, and elevated platforms. These residences were often situated directly adjacent to the large pyramids, symbolizing the close relationship between the ruling class and the sacred centers of power. Diet and health. The diet of the Caral people, confirmed through archaeological remains and bioarchaeological studies, was remarkably diverse and healthy, thanks to the Maritime-Agricultural Symbiosis. Plant-based staples included squash, beans, sweet potatoes, chili peppers, and various fruits like guava and lucuma. The primary industrial crop was cotton. Protein came overwhelmingly from the sea, primarily dried anchovies and sardines, which were high in essential fatty acids and minerals. Terrestrial protein was also sourced from llamas, used mainly for fiber and transport, but occasionally consumed, and wild game like deer. Analysis of human remains indicates a generally robust population, consistent with the rich, protein-supplemented diet. The lack of evidence of widespread malnutrition or disease outbreaks speaks to the successful organization of resource distribution by the central administration. Craft specialization.
The monumental scale of the city and the complex economic trade required specialized craftspeople. While Caral did not utilize metal, they mastered other materials. Textile weavers. Specialists were required for the industrial production of high-quality cotton nets and ropes for the fishing trade, as well as fine, complex textiles for clothing and ritual offerings. Stone and gourd carvers. Specialized artisans created finely carved gourds, often decorated with cosmological or geometric motifs, and precision-cut stone masonry for the construction of the public plazas, temple staircases, and elite dwellings. This level of specialization and urban organization firmly distinguishes Caral as a true city, where not everyone was required to farm or fish, but could dedicate their labor to crafts necessary for the function and prestige of the state. The complex scheduling and payment, likely in foodstuffs like dried fish or agricultural produce, of these specialized laborers would have been managed entirely by the Quipu-wielding bureaucracy of the upper sector. 11. The broader Norte Chico region and interconnection. Caral was not an isolated phenomenon. It was the largest and most complex settlement within a network of major urban centers known collectively as the Norte Chico, or Caral-Supe civilization. This network spanned 4 adjacent coastal river valleys, the Supe, Huaura, Pativilca, and Fortaleza. At least 30 major settlements flourished simultaneously with Caral in this relatively small geographical area. The existence of multiple substantial centers suggests a political structure that was likely not a single monolithic empire, but a confederation or a network of autonomous but mutually dependent polities, with Caral perhaps acting as the primus inter pares, the primary ceremonial and administrative hub. Key sites within this network reveal the depth of this complexity. Aspero. Located directly on the coast near the mouth of the Supe River, Aspero features its own impressive U-shaped platform mounds and complex ceremonial architecture. It was the crucial maritime counterpart to Caral, controlling the massive influx of marine resources. Its own monumental status confirms that the coastal people, while integrated into the trade system, maintained their own centers of power and religious authority. Tupagarro. Situated just a few kilometers from Caral, Tupagarro is another monumental center featuring a massive sunken circular plaza. The close proximity of these two large cities has led to speculation that the valley might have been divided between two major competing or complementary power centers. Agora. This site and others like it often contain a large central meeting space, sometimes referred to as an ámbito or área ritual en foso, which reinforces the idea that communal ritual and public gathering were essential for social cohesion across the entire network. The interconnection among these sites was maintained by footpaths and trails, and, most significantly, by the continuous movement of goods. The massive scale of the cotton production, the coordinated construction projects, and the shared religious iconography, like the staff god across all these settlements, speak to a high degree of cultural homogeneity and political coordination, even without a central military force. The political power of the Norte Chico elite was rooted in their collective ability to manage this complex, multi-valley economic and ideological system.
12. The enigmatic absence of art and figurative expression. For a civilization that flourished for over a millennium and achieved such monumental architectural feats, Caral is striking for its relative absence of complex figurative art and sculpture. Unlike the richly decorated pottery, goldwork, and stone carving of later Andean cultures like Chavin or Moche, Caral's artistic output is sparse and primarily utilitarian or symbolic. The lack of extensive art is not due to preservation issues, but appears to be a genuine cultural preference or restriction. The art that does exist provides clues. Carved gourds. These feature geometric patterns and the aforementioned stylized early image of the staff god, suggesting that complex symbolic representation was reserved for important ritual objects. Small clay figurines. A few simple, unbaked clay figurines have been found, often depicting stylized human forms. Their simplicity contrasts sharply with the intricate ceramic figures and religious carvings of later eras. Murals, Vichama. The most expressive figurative art is found not at Caral itself, but at the later site of Vichama, which depicts the human cost of the environmental collapse, the starving figures. This artistic restraint suggests that the religious and political ideology of Caral was communicated primarily through monumental scale, structured architecture, and ritual performance, especially music and dance, rather than through widespread narrative art or detailed iconography used to decorate daily objects. The focus was on the collective experience within the sacred space, not on the individual artistic representation. The sophistication of the city was expressed through its engineering and organization, not its decoration. This characteristic is another unique factor that distinguishes Caral's independent path to civilization from the early artistic explosions seen in the contemporary Olmec culture in Mesoamerica or the artistic traditions of ancient Mesopotamia. 13. The final moments and aftermath of abandonment. The process of Caral's abandonment around 1800 BCE was gradual and deliberate, contrasting with the dramatic, violent ends of many other ancient cities. It was an orchestrated societal retreat in the face of insurmountable environmental challenges. As the devastating cycles of flooding and drought wrecked the economic stability of the region, the centralized authority of Caral could no longer be sustained. The prestige of the elite, which relied on their ability to mediate and predict the climate, crumbled as the climate grew unpredictable and hostile. The abandonment was marked by final symbolic acts. Ritual sealing. Archaeological evidence suggests that the main temples and structures were not sacked or destroyed, but ritually sealed. Final offerings, sometimes including quipu fragments and sacred textiles, were placed within the central hearths or buried in the plazas, and the structures were covered with layers of clean earth or sand. This act signifies a respectful departure, a ritual ending to a sacred place, rather than a forced evacuation. Cultural preservation. As the populace dispersed, they did not lose their identity. As previously noted, the migration led to the founding of new centers like Peñico, where Caral's unique architectural and administrative traditions were consciously maintained. The collapse of the city was not the collapse of the culture. The long-term aftermath of Caral's dispersal was a crucial transition period in Andean history, known as the Initial Period, c. 1800 to 900 BCE. With the major Norte Chico centers gone, political and religious authority decentralized. Numerous smaller, independent centers of power emerged across the coast and highlands. Crucially, these successor cultures took Caral's core innovations and developed them further. The U-shaped temple form evolved. Irrigation techniques were adapted, and the seeds of the staff god cosmology continued to germinate. This cultural diaspora ensured that the foundations of the America's oldest city became the living legacy of the entire Andean world, leading directly to the rise of regional power centers and eventually the pan-Andean influence of the Chavin culture. The true ending of Caral is not its abandonment, but the successful transmission of its heritage into the subsequent eras of South American civilization.
Section 14. The Archaeological Debate, Challenging the Maritime Hypothesis. The discovery and dating of Caral did not just rewrite the timeline of the Americas, it fundamentally reshaped a long-standing academic debate concerning the origins of civilization in the Andes. This was the clash between the Maritime Foundation Hypothesis, MFH, and the newer evidence supporting an agricultural foundation rooted in symbiosis. For decades, the MFH, championed primarily by American archaeologist Michael Mosley,
argued that the phenomenal richness of the Humboldt Current, the cold, nutrient-dense water flowing north along the Peruvian coast, provided such a superabundance of marine resources, anchovies, sardines, that it alone was sufficient to support dense, sedentary populations and the emergence of complex society. This theory suggested that early monumental centers were coastal and did not require the development of large-scale irrigation agriculture, which was considered a much later development. The dating of Caral, a massive, complex, and inland city built around large-scale irrigation-based cotton production, presented a direct challenge to the MFH. Dr. Ruth Shady Solis and her supporters emphasized the strategic importance of cotton, the industrial crop, as the resource that truly centralized power and organized labor. They argued that only the necessity of organizing irrigation and controlling the production of the essential raw material, cotton for nets, could explain the scale of the state administration at Caral. The ultimate resolution was the synthesis now widely accepted, the Maritime-Agricultural Symbiosis. This model acknowledges the undeniable importance of the marine resources, protein, while recognizing the strategic necessity of the inland agricultural product, cotton, for the coastal economy. The debate established a crucial concept. Early Andean civilization was a product of ecological complementarity. It was the trade network that coordinated these resources, not the dominance of one over the other, that acted as the engine of state formation. The ability of the Caral elite to manage the specialized production and exchange between distinct ecological zones was their true source of power. This refined understanding of Caral's economic foundation is one of its most important contributions to global anthropology, demonstrating a unique path to urbanism based on organized interdependency. Section 15. Architecture as Ideology, the Power of Ritual Space. The planning and structure of Caral's monumental architecture are a physical language, communicating the state's ideology and reinforcing the social hierarchy. Every feature of the ceremonial center was designed for a purpose beyond mere shelter or elevation. The contrast between the Pirámide Mayor and the sunken circular plazas, SCPs, is the clearest expression of power dynamics. The pyramid, the elevated platform reached by steep central staircases, was a space of restricted access and vertical differentiation. The ascent itself was a dramatic, ritual procession, physically separating the elite and the priests from the populace below. The summit likely contained small enclosed rooms where the most sacred, high-status rituals, perhaps astronomical observations or final offerings, were conducted, emphasizing the ruler's exclusive access to the divine or cosmological knowledge. The sunken circular plaza, SCP, was the zone of horizontal integration. Its circular nature fostered a sense of unity and provided an acoustic bowl to amplify the ritual music. It was here that the massed population gathered to witness and participate in the public, state-sponsored performances. The SCP served to unify the diverse labor groups and kinship units, ILU, under a shared, powerful sensory experience. Furthermore, the integration of astronomical markers into the architecture is a key component of the ideological control. The careful orientation of the platforms and the placement of features like the Huanca stone, a large standing stone found near some structures, suggest that the elite possessed the knowledge to track solar and lunar cycles. By accurately predicting the arrival of the seasons, a critical knowledge for an agricultural society reliant on irrigation, the priests could present themselves as indispensable mediators between the people and the powerful forces of nature. Their power was derived from celestial knowledge and control over time, not military might. The city itself was a cosmological machine built to demonstrate and reinforce the absolute necessity of the ruling class for the continued survival and prosperity of the Caral people. Section 16. Techniques of Archaeological Investigation at Caral. The modern understanding of Caral has been built on an interdisciplinary foundation, moving beyond traditional shovel and trowel excavation to incorporate advanced scientific techniques. This methodological rigor has been essential for establishing and defending Caral's status as a primary cradle of civilization. Precision radiocarbon dating, C14, the cornerstone of the Caral project. The dating of the preserved reed fibers from the shikra bags provided dozens of consistent, scientifically verifiable dates that conclusively place the construction phase between 2600 and 2000 BCE. This use of construction material as datable samples was critical to bypassing the lack of pottery. LiDAR and remote sensing. To understand the city within its geographical context, archaeologists utilize LiDAR, light detection and ranging. Mounted on aircraft, LiDAR pulses penetrate vegetation and sand cover to create highly accurate 3D maps of the terrain. This technology has confirmed the massive extent of the irrigation canals outside the city limits and helped locate other less visible contemporary settlements across the entire Norte Chico Valley system, revealing the full extent of the unified civilization. Paleo-environmental proxies. The hypothesis of an environmental collapse is supported by multi-proxy analysis. Scientists analyze deep-sea sediment cores from the Pacific, which contain records of ancient El Niño events and sediment runoff. They also examine high-altitude ice cores from the Andean glaciers, which preserve records of ancient rainfall and atmospheric conditions. These studies provide an independent global climate record that precisely correlate the severe environmental instability around 1800 BCE with the timing of Caral's abandonment. Bioarchaeology and dietary analysis. The stable isotope analysis of human remains, as mentioned, provides physiological proof of the trade network. Furthermore, paleopathology, the study of ancient diseases and injuries on the skeletal remains, confirms the lack of trauma associated with warfare, but has begun to yield information about non-lethal injuries or occupational stress, helping to paint a picture of the physical demands placed on the Caral laborers. The success of the Caral project demonstrates the necessity of integrating multiple scientific disciplines, archaeology, climatology, engineering, and chemistry, to fully reconstruct the history of an ancient, non-literate civilization. This holistic approach ensures that the story of Caral is not based on speculation, but on empirical, verifiable data.
17. The unique character of Caral's development. Caral's trajectory toward urbanism is unique, not only in the Americas, but globally, due to its singular combination of achievements and absences. This city achieved monumental sophistication while consciously foregoing technologies and social structures that were considered hallmarks of state formation elsewhere. The lack of both pottery and metallurgy during its thousand-year zenith, 3000 to 1800 BCE, is profoundly informative. While the contemporaneous civilizations in Mesopotamia and Egypt relied heavily on ceramics for storage, cooking, and artistic expression, and were entering the Bronze Age, Caral engineered its society with simpler materials. Food was cooked in gourds, baskets, or directly over fires. Storage relied on woven fiber containers and underground pits. This demonstrates a path where social and political complexity outpaced material and metallurgical technology. The power of the state resided in its organizational capabilities, its ability to marshal fiber, stone, and labor rather than its mastery of fire and metal. Furthermore, the absence of extensive figurative art, as previously noted, suggests an entirely different approach to cultural transmission and state propaganda. The ideology was not spread through easily transportable statues or mass-produced pottery, since they had none, but through architectural scale, acoustic performance, and ritual spectacle staged in the great plazas. The message of the state was experienced collectively and physically, rather than consumed individually or visually. This focus on performance and shared sensory experience highlights a key difference in the nature of Caral's social contract compared to other early states. The peaceful nature of Caral remains the most striking anomaly.
Its long-term stability without military coercion suggests a highly effective system of ideological control based on mutual economic benefit and religious awe. This offers a profound historical model, challenging the long-held assumption in anthropology that warfare and coercion are necessary or inevitable components of early state formation. Caral proved that logistics and faith could command large populations and build monumental cities just as effectively as the sword. 18. Caral and the concept of the city. Defining what constitutes a city in the archaeological record is often debated, but Caral meets the criteria established by urban theorists, solidifying its claim as America's oldest urban center. A city is generally characterized by large population and density. Caral and the entire Norte Chico network supported a population significantly larger and denser than surrounding villages. Monumental public works. The construction of the 6 massive pyramids and the sunken circular plazas clearly constitutes monumental public works requiring massive, centrally organized labor. Social stratification, evidenced by the clear architectural division between the elite housing in the upper sector and the common residences in the lower sector, and differentiation in burials. Specialized labor, demonstrated by the full-time roles of weavers, stone carvers, engineers, hydraulic and seismic, administrators, Quipu users, and ritual specialists, musicians and priests. Centralized authority, evident in the ability to coordinate inter-regional trade, manage massive irrigation systems, and compel thousands of individuals to participate in construction projects, the Mit'a System. Caral's achievement lies in establishing all these criteria independently and synchronously with the global birth of urbanism. Its status is not diminished by the lack of certain technologies, but rather amplified by the ingenuity required to build a city based entirely on the mastery of fiber, stone, and logistics. It is a testament to the adaptability of human societies, demonstrating that urban complexity can be achieved through multiple, divergent evolutionary paths.
19. The role of Dr. Ruth Shady Solis and historical justice. No history of Caral is complete without acknowledging the central role of Dr. Ruth Shady Solis, the Peruvian archaeologist who not only rediscovered the city's true age, but dedicated her career to its preservation and recognition. For decades, the site was known but marginalized by international and local academia due to the prevailing biases against non-ceramic inland sites. Dr. Shady's commitment was crucial for several reasons. Challenging the bias. She recognized the significance of the architecture despite the absence of traditional Old World markers like ceramics and gold, challenging the prevailing Eurocentric and Mesoamerican-centric models of civilization. Methodological rigor. Her insistence on systematic excavation and the careful dating of the shikra bags provided the irrefutable scientific evidence needed to overturn centuries of historical error. Advocacy and preservation. Beyond the initial discovery, Dr. Shady has tirelessly championed the cause of Caral, not just as a historical site, but as a crucial part of Peruvian identity. Her work ensured the site's protection from looting and encroachment, paving the way for its UNESCO World Heritage designation in 2009. Ethical archaeology. Her team's approach emphasizes collaboration with local communities, ensuring that the local populace benefits from tourism and is invested in the site's preservation, a model for ethical archaeological practice in the modern era. Dr. Shady's work represents a major act of historical justice, restoring the rightful place of the ancient Andean peoples at the very beginning of the global story of civilization. Her determination in the face of academic skepticism ultimately forced a wholesale revision of the history books, solidifying Caral's status as a fundamental starting point for the development of complex societies in the Americas. 20. The continuing research frontier, beyond Caral proper.
The current focus of archaeological research in the Norte Chico area extends far beyond the central city of Caral, aiming to understand the full political, social, and economic landscape of the entire civilization. The key frontier is understanding the regional integration and the political relationships between the 30 recognized monumental settlements. Research continues at key regional sites to build this comprehensive picture. Vichama and the famine murals. The ongoing analysis of the murals at Vichama, depicting starving people and ritual scenes related to the climate collapse, offers rare insights into the societal memory and trauma of the climate collapse. These findings demonstrate that archaeology can sometimes recover historical narratives, even from non-literate societies. The Northern Valleys. Investigations are intensifying in the Pativilca and Fortaleza valleys, aiming to determine if the political control exerted by Caral extended equally to these more distant settlements, or if they operated as largely autonomous yet culturally linked city-states. This exploration seeks to understand the true political model of the Norte Chico civilization, whether it was a centralized state, a loosely integrated kingdom, or a system of competing peer polities. The source of fiber. Locating and excavating the ancient fields and small farming hamlets that specialized entirely in cotton cultivation is a current priority. Understanding the scale of cotton production and the complexity of the secondary irrigation networks is essential to precisely quantify the economic engine that drove the monumental construction. The continued use of LiDAR technology across the river valleys will be critical in mapping the full extent of the ancient hydraulic infrastructure. This will allow researchers to model the energy expenditure and organizational capacity required to maintain the civilization's lifeblood, the water supply. The story of Caral is still being written, with every new excavation, analysis, and climate study adding layers to our understanding of this unique American cradle of civilization.
Caral and the development of hydraulic engineering. The vast, long-lasting stability of Caral was intrinsically linked to its mastery of hydraulic engineering. To transform the arid desert terrace of the Supe Valley into productive farmland, the Caral people had to develop sophisticated systems for managing water, a critical and scarce resource. This mastery predates complex irrigation systems found in later Mesoamerican and other Andean societies. The evidence for this engineering genius lies in the extensive network of irrigation canals identified through archaeological surveys and modern LiDAR technology. Diverting the Supe River. The engineers of Caral developed techniques to divert the water of the Supe River, which flows intermittently, using gravity-fed canals. These canals were not simple ditches, they were carefully engineered channels that had to maintain precise gradients over long distances to ensure that water flowed effectively without eroding the canal walls. The success of these canals allowed the inland farmers to reliably cultivate cotton and food crops. Maintaining the system. The sheer complexity and length of the canal system required continuous maintenance. This effort necessitated a massive, organized communal labor force, again, likely managed through the non-coercive system of civic duty organized by the central bureaucracy using the Quipu for record-keeping. The successful operation of the canals was the physical backbone of the state's legitimacy, as the elite controlled the literal source of life and wealth. Water management and control. The canals did more than just transport water. They were part of a system of water management. The control of water rights and the scheduling of irrigation became a central administrative task, further cementing the power of the elite who could dictate when and where water flowed. This centralized control over a vital resource is a classic characteristic of an early powerful state. The collapse of Caral around 1800 BCE is directly linked to the destruction of this hydraulic infrastructure by catastrophic El Niño flooding and the inability to rebuild it during the ensuing prolonged drought. The failure of the engineering system led directly to the failure of the economic and political system. Thus, Caral's history underscores the profound link between environmental adaptation, engineering prowess, and the longevity of early American states. 22. The role of shamanism and ecclesiastical power. Given the absence of military force, the power structure in Caral was fundamentally theocratic or ecclesiastical. The ruling elite likely functioned primarily as a priestly class or a group of shaman administrators, basing their authority on their perceived ability to interact with the spiritual world and control the forces of nature. The evidence for this reliance on spiritual authority is multifaceted. The sacred landscape. The entire city and its surrounding environment were treated as sacred. The monumental architecture, particularly the sunken circular plazas and the amphitheater, acted as ritual performance arenas. The very act of building the monumental platforms, financed through shikra labor, was a continuous act of religious devotion and collective sacrifice. The power of music. The recovered bone flutes and cornets confirmed that music was a sophisticated ritual technology. In many ancient societies, specialized musical performance was used by shamans and priests to induce altered states of consciousness, mediate between the human and spiritual worlds, and heal. The Caral elite may have used these synchronized musical events to create a powerful shared religious experience, fostering loyalty and spiritual awe rather than fear. Astronomical knowledge. The deliberate orientation of the pyramids and the presence of associated stone markers, huancas, indicate a deep applied knowledge of astronomy. This knowledge allowed the elite to accurately predict the solstices and equinoxes, crucial timings for the agricultural cycle. By controlling the calendar, the elite reinforced their claim as essential mediators, validating their authority through the seeming ability to command time and the seasons. The Caral state was a demonstration of the power of ideology over force. The priests were the engineers, the astronomers, and the chief administrators, blending spiritual authority with practical life-sustaining knowledge. This model of theocracy, where sacred knowledge underpins political legitimacy, would remain a powerful current throughout subsequent Andean history.
Caral's place in world heritage and contemporary relevance. The designation of the sacred city of Caral-Supe as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2009 formalized its historical importance and guaranteed international support for its preservation. This status highlights its contribution not just to Peruvian or American history, but to the collective human story. Caral provides a unique case study with profound contemporary relevance. A model of peace. In a world often defined by conflict, Caral offers a historical model of a complex, urban, stable civilization that was not founded on military might. Its 1,200-year history of peaceful cooperation, driven by mutual economic benefit, remains an inspiring outlier in the history of state formation. Climate change resilience and collapse. The clear evidence that Caral's decline was precipitated by a massive, sustained climate crisis, El Niño, and subsequent drought, makes the site a critical resource for understanding how early, sophisticated societies reacted to catastrophic environmental change. The trauma recorded in the Vichama murals serves as a stark historical warning about the fragility of civilization in the face of climate instability. Indigenous identity. For the people of Peru and the wider Andean region, Caral is a source of immense national and indigenous pride. It establishes their cultural roots as being among the oldest on Earth and reframes their history not as a peripheral development, but as a central, independent force in the global rise of civilization. The ongoing work at Caral is therefore not merely an archaeological endeavor. It is a project of global historical revision, one that demands we expand our definitions of complexity and recognize the diverse, innovative paths that human societies have taken toward building the first great cities. The stone pyramids of Caral stand today as a monumental reminder of the deep, sophisticated, and independent origins of civilization in the Americas.
24. The question of writing and symbolic representation. Caral's reliance on the Quipu for complex administration raises fundamental questions about the definition of writing and symbolic communication in early human history. For centuries, the development of phonetic or logographic script, like cuneiform or hieroglyphs, was considered a mandatory benchmark for true civilization. Caral challenges this entirely. The Quipu, as demonstrated at Caral, provided a system capable of encoding numerical data for accounting, tribute, and census,
and likely served as a complex mnemonic device for recording non-numerical information, such as genealogical records or historical narratives. While Caral's quipu is simple compared to the highly complex, potentially narrative encoding quipus of the later Inca Empire, its function as a state-level administrative technology is clear. The absence of a traditional visual script forces a broader perspective. Multiple paths to literacy. Caral proves that highly complex social, political, and economic organization can emerge and be sustained for over 1,000 years using a non-visual, tactile system of record-keeping. The Caral elite were literate in the complex language of knots, color, and chord placement. The priority of information, the need for precise, durable, and transportable information management to coordinate the trade between the coast and the valley, was met by the quipu, not by struggling to invent a phonetic alphabet. The Caral people prioritized the encoding of data over the encoding of language sounds. The question remains whether the quipu could record abstract concepts or historical events during the Caral period. While difficult to prove, the fact that the quipu endured for millennia and evolved to manage the Inca Empire's history suggests that the seeds of narrative and abstract recording were present in this early form. Caral is a crucial case study for global historical science, demanding that we expand our definition of literacy and writing to include sophisticated non-visual technologies. 25. Caral's influence on later coastal and highland cultures. Following the dispersal of the Norte Chico people around 1800 BCE, the cultural traditions of Caral did not simply disappear into the desert sand. They served as the deep foundation for the next wave of major Andean developments, profoundly influencing the subsequent initial period, c. 1800 to 900 BCE, and early horizon, c. 900 to 200 BCE. In the immediate aftermath, the coastal area saw the rise of new centers that adopted Caral's architectural vocabulary, El Paraíso and Bondoria. These later sites, while having their own unique characteristics, continued to utilize the concept of large, non-residential U-shaped temple complexes built around massive central plazas. The emphasis remained on monumental public architecture as the core of the state's ideology. Expansion of irrigation. The hydraulic engineering skills honed at Caral were refined and expanded. Later coastal cultures developed even larger, more extensive canal systems, allowing for the widespread cultivation of crops like maize, which gained prominence after the Caral period. The organizational model for managing this infrastructure was inherited directly from the Caral administrators. Most significantly, the cultural and spiritual framework of Caral was a prerequisite for the Pan-Andean influence of the Chavin culture, which unified much of Peru under a powerful religious cult. Chavin architecture adopted and perfected the sunken circular plaza and the use of monumental space for dramatic ritual. Moreover, Chavin's central iconography, the staff god, is directly traceable to the early depictions found at Caral, establishing a direct, unbroken spiritual lineage spanning 2 millennia. Caral, therefore, is not merely the oldest city in the Americas, but the primordial source of Andean cultural continuity. The trajectory from the peaceful pre-ceramic builders of the Supe Valley to the technologically sophisticated metalworkers and monumental architects of later eras is a direct line of inheritance, with Caral providing the core administrative, architectural, and cosmological lexicon.
26. A monumental achievement in a time of simplicity. To fully appreciate Caral's achievement, one must consider the simplicity of its toolset. The monumental stone pyramids and complex urban plans were executed without many of the technologies considered essential for old-world monumental construction. No metal tools. Construction, quarrying, and carving were performed exclusively with stone tools, percussion stones, hand axes, and scrapers. The precision necessary for the finely fitted stonework found in the plazas and staircases, achieved only with stone implements, speaks to an astonishing level of craftsmanship and labor intensity. No wheel. Like all pre-Columbian cultures, the Caral builders had not developed the wheel for transport or construction. All the stone,
earth and reed bags used in the massive pyramids had to be carried by human labor, often over significant distances. The total volume of material moved for the 6 major pyramids is estimated in the millions of cubic feet, underscoring the extraordinary organization required to sustain such a massive effort using only human carrying capacity. Limited building materials. The architecture is a study in efficiency, relying on locally sourced river stone, earth, and the fibers of reeds and cotton. The innovative use of the shikra bags as a core structural element maximized local materials and minimized the need for complex, heavy stone blocks. Caral is a powerful testament to the triumph of human ingenuity and organization over technological limitations. It shows that high-level social complexity and massive engineering feats are fundamentally driven by the capacity for centralized planning and cooperative labor, rather than the possession of advanced metallurgy or transportation technology. This remains one of the most compelling insights offered by the study of America's oldest city. 27. Caral's global significance and the future of the narrative. Caral's integration into the global historical narrative is now complete, placing it firmly among the world's most ancient and innovative civilizations. Its unique characteristics, peaceful governance, reliance on a symbiotic economy, use of a non-visual information system, Quipu, and monumental architecture achieved without metal make it a crucial comparative case for global history. The ultimate significance of Caral can be summarized as follows. Challenging unilineal evolution. Caral demolishes the idea that civilization must follow a single, predetermined path, for example, invention of writing, then pottery, then metallurgy, then state. It demonstrates multilineal evolution, where different societies achieved comparable complexity by prioritizing different technologies and organizational structures. Global synchronization. It establishes the Americas as being on the same timeline as the traditional Old World cradles of civilization, affirming the deep, independent capacity of human populations in the New World to innovate and build complex societies. Modern stewardship. The ongoing work at Caral is an example of a successful, ethical partnership between international scientific researchers, the Peruvian government, and the local communities. The site is a catalyst for economic development and a source of educational renewal for the region, proving that preserving the deep past can directly benefit the present. The story of Caral is the story of a civilization born not of conflict, but of careful calculation, cooperation, and collective faith. It stands today as a powerful, silent monument to the sophistication and peaceful ingenuity of the earliest urban dwellers in the Americas.
28. The uniqueness of Caral's labor organization, the Mit'a Precedent. The construction of Caral's monumental architecture, the colossal platforms and extensive irrigation canals required an organizational capacity that is extraordinary, especially considering the absence of draft animals, wheeled transport, and metal tools. This massive communal effort foreshadowed a key administrative feature of later Andean civilizations, the Mit'a system. The Mit'a, most famously utilized by the Inca Empire, was a system of reciprocal public labor service owed to the state. It was not slavery, but a form of rotational taxation paid in labor for the construction of roads, bridges, temples, and large agricultural projects. In Caral, the use of the shikra bag suggests a proto-Mit'a system was already in place thousands of years earlier. The standardized size and composition of the stone-filled bags allowed the central administration to easily assign and track labor quotas to the various kinship groups Ailu in the valley. Standardized quota. A central authority could simply mandate that each Ailu provide a certain number of shikra bags filled with stones for a construction phase. This was an effective and quantifiable way to mobilize a huge workforce without currency or coercion. Reciprocity. In return for this communal labor, the central administration likely provided essential goods like high-protein dried fish and services
like the organization of the irrigation schedule and the spiritual assurance provided by the public rituals. The labor was understood as a religious duty that guaranteed the continued prosperity and stability of the economic system. This innovative, non-coercive system of labor management, born in the pre-ceramic city of Caral, allowed the state to coordinate massive engineering projects for over a millennium. It established the administrative blueprint for state-level organization in the Andes, proving that the roots of the sophisticated Inca imperial system of labor and resource management stretch back to America's oldest known city. 29. The Caral legacy in modern Peru, cultural identity and tourism. The rediscovery and official recognition of Caral have had a profound impact on modern Peruvian national and cultural identity. The site is not merely an object of academic study, it is a powerful symbol of indigenous heritage and deep historical continuity. For decades, the historical narrative focused on the later Inca Empire, with many earlier cultures being less known to the public. Caral has dramatically shifted this focus, allowing Peruvians to claim a cultural lineage that places them among the first urbanized populations on the planet. This claim strengthens national pride and emphasizes the deep intellectual capacity of their ancient ancestors. The site is also a central node for sustainable tourism and community development. The ongoing archaeological project, under the guidance of Dr. Ruth Shady Solis, operates with a strong commitment to ethical practice and local involvement. Local employment. The project employs local residents as archaeologists, excavators, conservationists, and tourism guides. This directly links the preservation of the past to the economic viability of the present communities in the Supe Valley, fostering a strong sense of local ownership and protection of the heritage. Educational outreach. The site serves as an open-air classroom, attracting Peruvian students and researchers, ensuring that the legacy of Caral is integrated into the national educational curriculum. Caral has become a powerful counter-narrative to the colonial history, establishing an indigenous American heritage that rivals the timeline of Europe and Asia. The maintenance and study of this ancient city demonstrate how the deepest past can be leveraged as a tool for modern cultural empowerment and sustainable economic growth.
Caral and the global study of primary states. Caral's inclusion as a primary center of civilization offers crucial comparative data for understanding the general principles of state formation across the globe. By comparing Caral with its contemporaries, Sumer in Mesopotamia, the Nile Valley in Egypt, and the Yellow River in China, archaeologists can isolate the universal and the unique factors driving the transition from village life to urbanism. Universal factors observed at Caral. Environmental necessity. The rise of the state was tied to the need to organize large-scale public works, irrigation systems, to manage a vital resource, water, in a challenging environment. Centralized authority. A central power structure emerged to coordinate large specialized populations and manage resource distribution. Ideological legitimacy. Rulers used non-material means, religion, ritual, cosmology, to justify their power and unify the populace. Unique unidirectional factors at Caral. Technology lag. Complexity was achieved without the reliance on metallurgy or pottery, proving these technologies are not prerequisites for state formation. Absence of militarism. The peaceful nature challenges the long-held assumption that early states require coercive force to integrate and maintain large populations. Non-visual record-keeping. The Quipu demonstrates that sophisticated administration does not require a visual phonetic script. In the global study of primary states, those that emerged without external influence, Caral provides a vital control group with a set of minimalistic technologies maximizing the focus on social organization and hydraulic ingenuity. The lessons from Caral confirm that human capacity for civilization is not bound by a single technological or military template, making its history fundamentally important to the broader field
of historical anthropology. 31. Comparative archaeology, Caral and the Olmec. To fully appreciate Caral's independent achievement, it is useful to compare it with the next great civilization to rise in the Americas, the Olmec culture of Mesoamerica. While the Olmec are often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica, Caral is the earliest known urban center in the entire hemisphere, predating the Olmec by over 1,000 years. Feature: Caral, c. 3000 to 1800 BCE. Olmec, c. 1500 to 400 BCE. Chronology: oldest known American city, pre-ceramic. Emerged 1,500 years later. Material culture: no pottery, no metallurgy. Used pottery, developed early metal use in later periods. Key resource: cotton and dried fish, symbiosis. Maize, agriculture, and volcanic stone. Governance style: peaceful theocracy, power based on logistics and ritual. Evidence of warfare and territorial expansion, hierarchical kingship. Information system: Quipu, knotted cords. Developed an early hieroglyphic writing system. Artistic feature: monumental architecture, minimal figurative art. Colossal heads, massive realistic sculpture, rich iconography. The comparison highlights two divergent paths to civilization in the Americas. Caral pursued a non-military, logistical, and technologically minimalist path in a resource-scarce desert environment, prioritizing massive communal labor and centralized water control. The Olmec, conversely, arose in a resource-rich tropical environment, quickly developing writing, sophisticated figurative art, and more pronounced evidence of warfare and kingship. This comparison underscores Caral's importance as an independent experiment in state formation. It proves that the earliest American civilizations did not share a single cultural source, but were the result of separate, localized innovations dictated by unique environmental and social pressures.
32. Unpacking the absence of pottery. The lack of pottery at Caral, a feature shared across the entire Norte Chico civilization during the late Archaic period, is a defining and complex characteristic that has driven much of the archaeological debate. In most parts of the world, pottery is invented long before state-level society, enabling new methods of cooking, long-term storage, and artistic expression. Why did Caral become a monumental urban center without it? Functional alternatives. The Caral people were masters of fiber technology. They relied on woven baskets, cotton bags, and especially gourds, often carved or decorated, for transport, storage, and cooking. Gourds can be boiled, used for liquids, and are lighter than ceramics. This fiber-based technology provided sufficient functionality, reducing the immediate necessity for clay-based vessels. Economic priority. The primary industrial focus was cotton production for fishing nets, which was essential for the entire economy. Resources and specialized labor were overwhelmingly directed toward this strategic fiber production, potentially delaying the widespread development of non-essential technologies like ceramics. Technological constraints. The dry, arid environment of the coast, while preserving organic material beautifully, might have made the widespread, resource-intensive production of high-quality ceramics more challenging than elsewhere. The absence of pottery confirms that technological development is not linear and can be decoupled from social complexity. Caral demonstrates that a society can achieve the highest levels of organization and engineering genius while bypassing certain material innovations, a finding that continuously challenges traditional models of human cultural evolution. Technological constraints. The dry, arid environment of the coast, while preserving organic material beautifully, might have made the widespread, resource-intensive production of high-quality ceramics more challenging than elsewhere. The absence of pottery confirms that technological development is not linear and can be decoupled from social complexity.
Caral demonstrates that a society can achieve the highest levels of organization and engineering genius while bypassing certain material innovations, a finding that continuously challenges traditional models of human cultural evolution. 33. The acoustics of ancient power. The design of the large public spaces at Caral suggests a profound understanding and deliberate use of acoustics as a tool of ideological control, turning the city into a monumental auditory environment. The amphitheater pyramid, with its tiered circular design and associated cache of flutes and cornets, is the clearest example. This structure was carefully shaped to amplify sound. The concentric shape would efficiently capture and amplify the sounds of the haunting bone orchestra, projecting the music across the plaza to the thousands of assembled spectators. Acoustic containment. The recessed nature of the plaza and the height of the surrounding platforms would have helped to contain the sound, making the ritual experience immersive and psychologically powerful for those gathered. Focus attention. The synchronization of the large orchestra and the projection of the sound from the elevated platforms would have immediately focused the attention of the entire crowd toward the elevated elite performing the ceremony. In a state without written media or a standing army, the use of sensory spectacle, visual, monumental scale, and auditory, amplified, ritual music, was the most potent way to transmit state ideology and forge a deep sense of communal identity and loyalty. The Caral leaders were masters of sound engineering, utilizing it as a foundational element of their peaceful, theocratic governance.
Caral, the silent pioneer. The history of the Caral civilization irrevocably reshaped the narrative of the Americas, establishing the sacred city of Caral-Supe as the oldest known urban center in the Western Hemisphere, flourishing over 1,000 years before any other comparable site. Active from approximately 3000 to 1800 BCE, Caral achieved the monumental scale and social complexity of a primary state, concurrent with the rise of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. The civilization's success was rooted in a unique and stable foundation, the Maritime-Agricultural Symbiosis. The inland city, built on sophisticated hydraulic engineering and the industrial production of cotton, controlled the trade of essential fishing nets for high-protein marine resources from the coast. Caral's governance model was characterized by its peaceful, theocratic nature. The elite maintained power not through military coercion, evidenced by the absence of fortifications and weaponry, but through their mastery of logistics, astronomical knowledge, and ritual spectacle, amplified by the architecture and bone flute orchestras. Their administration was maintained by the innovative Quipu system, the oldest known example of this crucial Andean technology. The civilization ultimately dispersed around 1800 BCE, a victim of catastrophic, prolonged climate change, extreme El Niño events, and drought that destroyed the vital irrigation system and trade network. Despite its end, Caral's legacy is profound. Its architectural forms, the U-shaped temple and sunken circular plaza, administrative technology, the Quipu, and religious motifs, the staff god, were carried by its migrating peoples, serving as the essential founding template for all subsequent great Andean cultures, linking America's oldest city directly to the later Inca Empire. Caral stands as a monument to the power of organization, cooperation, and independent ingenuity in the genesis of global civilization. And now, with the story of the peaceful pioneers of the Andes complete, the ancient city of Caral falls silent under the desert sky, allowing us all to finally drift off to sleep.